everyone. Welcome back to the Stigma Warriors. Today I'm joined by an amazing mom, an advocate who inspires so many of us with the way she loves, protects, and celebrates her son. He's medically complex. His name is Creed, but he's even more than that. He's full of life, love, and personality. So today we're going to talk about something real, how people often see the tubes and machines first and forget to see the child or the human behind them. So let's change that. Let's talk about who Creed really is. So without further ado, who is your son beyond the medical stuff? Let's start with something simple but totally powerful.
I mean, he's a 10-year-old boy. A lot of people just see the machines, but they don't realize that he still has the same, like he still needs the same sort of things that any other child would need. He still needs to be entertained and interacted with, and most people just think that because he's nonverbal that he can't really understand, but he is very cognitively aware of his surroundings and like what goes on around him. Um, he loves Disney movies, especially Disney movies that sing. He loves
Oh,
songs. Um, he loves his siblings screaming and making noise. He always laughs at that. He thinks that's really funny,
oh my goodness.
especially like if they're getting in trouble, like they're getting fussed at and they get upset and they like start crying. He thinks it's hilarious, and I don't know why, but
He's
he
a typical
laughs at
older
them.
brother.
Yeah. So I was telling people, like, he very much knows that they're getting in trouble, and like we're fussing at them. And my 7-year-old daughter, I love her, but she's just very dramatic. So anytime she gets in trouble, it's like a whole like crying, meltdown, screaming, whatever. Like she gets so upset and he just laughs the whole time. He thinks it's so funny.
Oh my goodness. Well, that goes to show you he's a typical child. He's a typical older brother. I mean, I am the oldest in my family, and I can tell you, like, I would laugh if my siblings would get in trouble.
Yeah, and that's him. Like he thinks it's so funny and I'm like, you can't laugh at other people getting in trouble, Creed. It's really rude. So
Well, I mean, it really goes to show you, like, behind all of his equipment, his medical complexities, he is still a normal child. I mean, he may
yeah.
not speak, he may not be verbal, but he very much understands, as you said, and that is true because I've worked with people with special needs and various like disabilities, and I have found that to be so as well. Like, there's a lot going on that they understand that they may not be able to tell us, but they really are aware and they show it.
Yes, I mean, and he is very cognitively aware. He
Oh,
reacts differently to everybody. My stepfather, who my kids call Papa, he's raised me since I was like 6. He's always been a part of their life. So, like that's Creed's best friend. It doesn't matter what
oh,
kind of mood he's in. If he walks in and he can hear him talking, Creed automatically starts smiling.
that is
Like
precious.
he loves his Papa.
Oh, so does he have a favorite song or toy?
Not necessarily like a toy. I mean, I guess like he likes um to play with his iPad, like for certain things. When he was
Very a
really
typical
little, he
child.
used to play this game called Peekaboo Barn that was recommended by the blind services, and he really
Uh-huh.
liked that. But
Oh,
he has a like his favorite movies are like Moana and Tarzan. For a long time, the only movie he would watch was Tarzan, like 2 years. And then Moana came out and he became obsessed with Moana. And now we've kind of gotten him to the point where pretty much any Disney movie that has a lot of songs in it, he's okay with. And then at night we play his Toonies box that you can put like different characters on top of, and it sings the songs so the light isn't flashing in his face and it doesn't keep him
oh,
awake.
yeah.
But he really likes that too. And Elmo, he loves Elmo. That's like a new obsession within like the last 6 months. I think he likes his voice because it's so high pitched.
Yeah, a lot of
So
kids find that
yeah,
funny.
yeah, he laughs at Elmo a lot.
Aw. So what's something that makes you go, yep, that is totally him?
Um, Shenanigans, literally like 100%. I tell people all the time I should have named him Loki because he does like we cannot tell him like, hey, we have plans this weekend because he will absolutely make it to where those plans have to be canceled. Um, and I make jokes all
Okay.
the time because like it's not like it's kind of like a dark humor thing, but it's literally my sister-in-law's baby shower was like a month ago, and I was one of the hostesses, so I'm trying to help set everything up. My mom, it was about an hour from our house, so my mom was staying there overnight, and I get my mom dropped off, and I come back home, and Creed starts coughing up blood, and I'm
Oh
like,
God.
okay, something's not right, and he's not using the bathroom, and so I'm like, okay, I'm
Ooh.
just gonna take him to our local ER and get them to do a basic workup. If there's not anything majorly wrong, I'll contact a specialist on Monday. Well, of course, he had severe pulmonary edema, and that's the only time he's ever been life flighted without me because I had my 6-year-old and
Oh my
I had
goodness.
nothing like I so my husband met him in Austin. And, we did what we had to, but I was like, Creed, we literally just needed one day. Like that was it, and he was fine. I mean, there was nothing like it wasn't like a critical, he wasn't going downhill super fast, but it was kind of one of those like if I don't get him to the hospital soon, we're gonna end up in a worse position. And it's with everything. And I'm like, Creed, I just need you to not like give me heart attacks. Like, don't throw a mucus plug in the middle of the night and like stop breathing on me, or like need a
Yeah.
trach change at 2 a.m. when I'm trying to sleep. Like, those are the things that he does. And like, it's not even like I'll change the trach and then he just gets super happy and he'll like start laughing. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
okay,
goodness.
like I know that you wanted me awake because you're awake, but I also have to sleep at some time.
Oh.
So, yeah, that is Creed. Like all the tricks are always up his sleeve, and we do not tell him plans. Like if he's admitted to the hospital, we do not tell him when we're going home. We don't like we just take him home, because I'm like, don't tell him. Like he will absolutely pull out some trick that none of us know what it's about, and we're gonna be here for another week.
Oh goodness gracious. So, I mean, do you guys have like any favorite routines or favorite quirks that you love about Creed?
I mean, really, it's Creed makes the rules. We just kind of follow his like he's on a pretty good routine, but it's not something that we put in place and it's not like a normal, routine. A lot of people are like, well, they need to sleep from this time to this time and we are not those people just because
Not gonna work.
we have 3 other kids and Creed with he's missing so much of his brain that he just doesn't have
Right.
a normal sleep wake cycle. Like on his EEGs and any sleep study, it'll say there are no sleep waves detected because he's sleeping and his heart rate goes down. It looks like he's sleeping, but there's not actual sleep waves. He never goes into REM sleep. So he's a super light sleeper and literally like wakes up at any little noise, any light, anything like that. But we normally try to like follow his schedule. And, if he wakes up at 2 a.m., then we're up at 2 a.m. And he's pretty particular. I mean, as soon as he's awake, he wants his movies or he wants noise or he wants the light on. And we just kind of follow his lead as far as like what he needs. Um, and honestly, I don't have a schedule. It's all chaos. Like it's just there's 4 kids and one of me, and my husband works like 70 to 80 hours a week. So it's like everybody is bathed, clean, fed, alive. We're all making it. Everybody can sleep in my bed. I don't care. There is no schedule. It's just whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like even a child with medical complexities that has a fully functioning brain, it's still going to be chaos because you just never know. Things can change.
Yeah,
So
and that's
you're doing
that's
the
why I
best you
said
can. You're doing a
it's
wonderful job.
literally his schedule, just whatever he needs at that point, and the
Yeah.
other kids need, we make it happen, and then we tackle the next obstacle.
Yeah, you're doing wonderful.
Thank you.
So when you're out in public or you're meeting someone new, what's the first thing that people notice or say about Creed?
It's usually like, you know, they'll ask like what's wrong with him or like why is he like that? And a lot of people don't realize that
Oh,
um what's wrong with him is a little, I guess, offensive. And when it's coming from a
yeah.
kid, it's not as big of a deal because kids don't really know how to put something like they don't know how to say it. Like they don't know what a diagnosis is for the most part. All they know is they're different. So
Yeah.
like I don't really take offense when kids say it, and I don't really take offense when adults say it either. I just say, he has a diagnosis, and it's better to say like, what is his diagnosis or something along those lines, because what's wrong with him is there's really nothing wrong with him. Like he was born this way, and this is how he was meant to be born for whatever reason. And that's usually the first thing that they ask. And if it's like a really small kid, sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, what's that machine? Or like, what's this? Or why is he in a wheelchair? Or so I just kind
Yeah.
of, explain to them what happened in kid terms and just like, I can't tell them he had a stroke when I was pregnant with him. They're not going to understand that. So I'm just like, he has a boo boo in his brain and he was born like that. And so he has to have this machine to breathe or this machine to eat and just kind of explain to them what the things are so they're not scared of them.
Right.
Um, Sometimes if he's laughing or smiling, they'll be like, "Oh, he's so cute," or like that would be the first thing. I guess not that they notice, but the first thing they commented on. But usually, the first thing they do notice is the wheelchair or the machines.
Yeah. What do you wish they would notice instead?
I guess just him as a person and realize that he there's still a person in there,
Yeah.
and that they can still talk to him and interact with him, and that he understands like
And he's got
maybe not,
feelings.
yeah, maybe not exactly what they're saying because he is on a lower cognitive level, but for the most part, like he will interact with them if they interact with him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's what any good mom would want for their children to be noticed as human beings and to be
Yeah.
treated as such, to be treated with respect and dignity. It's so good.
Yeah. And, I've tried to, I guess, model to my kids that not everybody really understands, and that when we meet somebody with a disability, we don't, that's not the first thing we notice. Just because obviously they've been exposed to it. My youngest daughter has autism, so she doesn't, for a long time she didn't talk. She's just starting to talk, but my kids have been exposed to that. And then obviously their older brother has multiple medical issues, and Creed has all of these machines and everything. So to them, it's not really abnormal to see somebody with any sort of disability because we have been exposed to multiple people through the community. Um, but we've tried to teach them like don't exclude those kids because they're different, or if someone asks a question, they're not always meaning to be rude. My
Yeah.
7-year-old has big problems when people ask what's wrong, or like, what's wrong with him? And she's like, there's nothing wrong with him. And I'm like, okay,
Oh,
Savannah. Like, no, baby, I know there's nothing wrong with him, but like, you can't respond that way. Like, do not get angry at them because they don't really understand what they're
she's
asking.
just
I'm like,
protective of her brother, though.
yes, very much so. Like
That's good. That's
when
good.
people used to talk to my younger daughter and they'd be like, hi, the kids would be like, hi, my name is whatever, what's your name? And Savannah would be like, her name's Maddie. She doesn't talk. She's got autism. And, just go about her day. But
Anna
she would.
seems wonderful. She seems like a very good sibling.
Yes, I love her to death. She's just a little she can come off a little aggressive because she doesn't like people like and I guess assuming something is wrong with Maddie or with Creed, which I do understand.
It would be nice if
Um
society could get the picture, and
yeah, yeah.
that's why, that's why I do what I do, right? Like that's why I have this channel because I'm trying to teach society, educate them about things that they by and large stigmatize, which really shouldn't be. Disability, chronic illness, mental illness, whatever. It should not be, there should be no stigma. People should be treating one another like humans, and everybody deserves respect and dignity. And that's the way it really should be.
Yes. We just want to
Right.
kind of explain to I guess others that um I guess teach her how to not respond so aggressively. I mean, in some situations where they are being derogatory, that is obviously like aggressiveness is expected. But I'm like, if they're
Right.
just genuinely curious and they don't know a different way to ask it, like we need to try and respond as appropriately as possible so that we're not scaring people from asking questions because answering those
Right.
questions is what helps raise awareness for these conditions.
Exactly. And I think in time she'll get it. It comes with age and maturity. She's still young. And I
Yeah,
think like, some role playing would probably help her. Like if they say, well, what's wrong with him? Like there's nothing wrong. He's beautifully made in God's image or, something like that, which would break the
yeah,
ice but still get the point across, but in a nicer and gentler way. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with him. He is made in God's image and he's so beautiful.
yeah,
Like something like, and I think that that will come in time.
it will. We're getting there. It's just taking some practice.
So have you ever had someone surprise you in a good way by seeing Creed for who he is? Like right away?
Um, I mean, most of the time it's like smaller kids, like really little kids, my cousin's kids. When we first moved to that area so we could be closer to the children's hospital, they had been around Creed, but not since like he'd gotten his wheelchair and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And they never even batted an eye at the fact that he couldn't walk or that he was in a wheelchair. Like my cousin's little girl Lily just took the wheelchair and was like, "Hey Creed, let's go look at these flowers," and "Hey Creed, let's go do this," and "Hey Creed, let's go do
Oh,
that." She never thought that it was, not normal for him to be like that. And it's like that with
that
most
is
of
so
the
cool.
very small children that like are under the age of 3. They don't, I mean, obviously they know he's different, but they don't treat him any differently. And I think
Right.
that's really when you kind of have to start instilling in your kids when they're that young that like yes they are different but different isn't less and different doesn't deserve less either because they deserve just as much effort as all of your other friends or all of your other family members. And that's when we've taught other kids that have been around Creed because at that point they are pretty much, I mean, their mind is a lot more open. They haven't been molded into, I
Right.
guess, like I don't really know how to explain it, but most of the time it's very small children that are like really surprising that don't even bat an eye at the fact that he has machines or, my youngest can't talk or, whatever. They're just like, that's fine. Okay, well, let's go look at these flowers or let's go play over here, whatever.
Kids are so pure. It's often when they get older, they get corrupted by the adults or older kids around them. And
Yeah.
that's when they start forming attitudes that may not be healthy, or they start treating people different. Like little kids, like you said, I mean, this is I've always said, they're in their purest form when they're younger and they don't see differences. They treat everybody with love and respect. And if we could always channel that, I feel like it's more the adults and the older children and teens that need teaching, and they can
And I
learn
think
from there
really a
too.
lot of a lot of that comes from the fact that most of the adults were raised in a generation where if you had a disabled child, they were put in an institution. You didn't raise them yourself. You didn't,
Oh,
so
that's
they
so
were
sad.
never exposed to any of that. And you didn't like, it was almost an embarrassment to the family. Whereas our kids now are being raised with these other kids and being exposed to,
Which is so wonderful because
so,
institution is terrible. Like no one deserves that. People deserve to be in their community and to be
yeah. And
included
I
as
think,
much as possible.
I think thankfully now that, you know, families have spoken out and said, like we're not doing this, like we're not putting our kid in an institution just because they're different. We're raising them at home. That now the generations that are growing up are being exposed to the different disabilities and the different abilities of all of these kids. And
Yeah.
they now realize that even though they are different, they're still human and they can still understand even if they can't speak or they have
Yeah.
cognitive delays. Like, so I think the younger generations are a little bit more like accepting of differences than the older generations were.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will say, as his mom, you know how to center him in love and not just care. And it's so obvious. Like I've been following your journey for like a really significant amount of time, and I've been very inspired by you. Um, and it just really shows like the love, it just really shines through. But what I'd like to ask you on that note are what are some of the ways that you'd like to share that you help him feel seen, included, and joyful in life every day?
So I mean, really, we include Creed in as much as we possibly can. Even if we have to like taking Creed anywhere is I literally have to pack like 6 tote boxes of just his stuff and all the medical stuff and the machines and the chargers. And it takes me like 3 to 4 days to pack for a weekend. Um, but most of those times are like, we're going to my in-laws for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. And I don't want to exclude him because he's family. There are times where, like, one Christmas, we had all just gotten over the flu, and I just didn't think that he was well enough to travel yet. Um, and so my mom stayed with him, but he's never he's never alone. Um, so we and we just do little things like we hang out in his room with like all the kids, or like if we have a movie night or something like that, we do it in his room so that he's included.
That's so
Um,
cool.
and
Oh,
anytime we sing happy birthday to the other kids, stuff like that, we bring the cake in his room so that he can be included. And we don't have to like move him out of like, his chair or whatever because he is a big kid. He's 89 pounds. He's not easy to pick up. So it's not like we can just pick him up and hold him. So we just try to include him in as many like ways as possible. Even if it takes like extra effort to like take him to the park with us or whatever, we just want him to be included because he is part of our family.
you're so awesome. I just got to tell you that.
Well, thank you.
So, if another mom or a child sees your son like in the park or at school or just out anywhere like out in the public, what do you want them to understand before they say something or look away?
Um, I mean, I just think that they need to know that it's okay for like their child to be curious. I see that a lot where they kind of don't really they get embarrassed of the questions their children are asking. But I mean, really, 95% of the time when it comes to a child, we are not going to get offended.
Right.
Um, because
Yeah.
they're not doing it out of malice. They're not asking these questions out of malice. They are genuinely just curious because they're a kid. It's just like them asking why the sky is blue and why the grass is green. They just
Right.
want to know why he's a little bit different, you know what I mean, than they are. And so they need to realize that most of the time it's okay. And, even if they want to just like double check and be like, hey, my daughter's really curious or my son's really curious, do you mind if she asks you questions?
Right.
Like if they're not comfortable with just asking questions, like it's always okay to ask to me. And
Yeah,
every
me
other
too.
parent I've met has said the same thing. They don't get offended
Right.
by answering questions.
And I totally agree with that. And like I come across this myself because I'm disabled, right? Like I'm blind and I have multiple other things going on as a result of mitochondrial disease. And there's times like the kids want to ask me questions and I'll hear the parents shush them. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This is okay. They can talk to me. They can ask me whatever they want. And I will speak up and I'll tell the parents that because I'll hear what's going on. I'm like, no, no, it's okay. I'm like, and I'll
Yeah.
turn to them like, go ahead and ask your question. What do you want to know, honey? Like, I want to normalize curiosity. There's nothing wrong. If you don't understand something, I'd prefer you ask than make assumptions. So, whenever I hear a parent like trying to shush their child, I'm like, no, 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 it's fine. They can ask anything they want to.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what I do. I'm like, it's okay. I'm not offended by the question or any questions they could ask. They can go ahead and ask, and I will answer them to the best of my ability while also keeping it appropriate for their age.
Right. And that goes along with the message that you'd want. the parents to teach their kids like it's okay. It's okay to accept differences. It's okay to ask questions as long as you're not being rude, which children generally aren't. Maybe they might not
Yeah.
ask in the most eloquent way, but they're kids. They're still learning to think abstractly and navigate a world. So I'm not going to really be too hard on a child for not saying it absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So if your son could tell the world one thing, what do you think that he would say? I know this is a big one, but it's one I like to ask.
Um, Honestly, that he's still, like I said earlier, a 10-year-old boy. Like, just his disability doesn't change the fact that he's still a child and he still needs the majority of everything that other children need. Because a lot of people, I mean, obviously he needs more than that too, medically, but as a human and as a child, he still needs what every other 10-year-old child needs.
Right. And I'm pretty sure like he'd want to shout that loud and clear.
Yeah, and that's like there are a lot of comments I've had when he gets really sick that just essentially tell me that, you know, I guess that he's not, I don't want to say not worth it, but that's essentially what they're saying. Like that he should, that I shouldn't keep doing this because he requires more than a normal child. And I'm
And
like,
that's
yes, but
terrible for anyone
just
to say that.
because he requires more doesn't mean he deserves less. I'm like, just because
Right.
he's disabled doesn't mean he doesn't deserve basic human rights.
Right. It
Like
doesn't
that
mean
is,
that he should be treated like he's subpar or subhuman. And how dare anybody say that to you? They have no right to say that.
yes, I tend to get very I guess vocal about like any sort of
I
comments like
would.
that just
I would.
because I'm like, I don't know how many times I have to say just because he is terminal or he is disabled, he still deserves those
Still a
basic human rights.
person.
Yeah,
He
like
deserves
if
to be kept comfortable. He deserves every intervention to help him. He deserves whatever is something that can be done. He deserves that. He doesn't deserve less or just substandard care because he's got the issues he has. Like that's oh my goodness. Like I can't even believe anybody would have the gall to say anything like that to you.
yeah, and I mean I think that's like it's so he is terminal. So we don't there are things we won't do. There are interventions we won't do. We have
Right.
hospice in place, so we have the ability to say like I wouldn't let them do CPR on him. That's not
Right.
fair to him. We're not going to bring him back once he's gone. That's crossing a line that I'm not willing to cross.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
there have been conversations with like, they had a huge meeting last time he was in the hospital with a couple different teams of doctors and we were discussing on whether or not to put his shunt back in and I was like, y'all are telling me the pressure isn't going to kill him, but it's just going to make him super uncomfortable. I'm like, so he's going to be uncomfortable for however long until he finally passes away from something else, but that's not really fair to
That's
him
not
either.
fair. That's not
I'm
fair.
like, so what do
And
we
that's
do here?
different than trying to revive him. He's still alive, right? Like he's still
Yeah.
alive and there is an intervention that can improve his quality of life. So why not do it?
And well, they were like, there's other options like stopping his feeds or turning off his ventilation. And I'm
Oh,
like,
that's so
I,
barbaric.
I lost my mind. I was like,
I
so
would have.
if I starved my completely normal neurotypical child or I
Then you'd go to jail.
covered their face with a pillow, I would go to jail or you would call CPS on me. But it's perfectly okay because my child is terminal and disabled. You think he deserves less than basic human rights.
That is,
I was
that's
like,
insane.
yeah, I was like, don't ever bring it up again because it's an absolute no. He's not brain dead. He's cognitively aware of
He's
everything that goes
aware of
on
what's
without
going
him.
on.
I was like, and starving him to death or suffocating him
The
to death is
pain he would
awful.
feel. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Like,
And they were like, well, it's not suffocation. You're not starving him. And I'm like, no, don't try to put pretty words on it.
yes,
That is
you
exactly
are.
what you're doing.
If you stop his fees, he's going to feel what would happen if you're hungry. And it's a miserable, miserable experience. And shutting off his vent, he's going to suffocate to death. Like, I can't even believe these doctors are even sitting here trying to say this. Like, for me, I would try to look at having their license stripped because that's crazy.
And I
Like
mean, I think it's
I
just
would. Oh,
it's not illegal just because those are considered medical interventions. So like with anybody,
that's
someone
crazy.
that has like ALS, they can decide they don't want to be ventilated anymore or they don't want to be fed through a tube anymore. Those are all medical interventions that are considered
That's what
sustaining life.
they decided.
Yes, but to them, I am the decision maker for him. So I have complete control over that. And there are some parents that have made those decisions, and I'm not faulting them for that choice because there are kids that are completely brain dead. They are on life support. And those things are, that's the only thing keeping them alive, but they have no brain activity.
Right, I
That's
get
the
that. They're
difference
not
between
aware.
them and my child.
They're
My
not
child is
aware.
completely cognitively aware. So I was very
Right.
angry that that was even allowed when he is cognitively aware of everything.
I can understand being brain dead and then taking them off life support. That's one thing, but Creed is aware. I mean, I've watched some of his videos on Facebook. He's very aware of what's going on. He's laughing, he's playing, he's interacting. And to think that
Yeah.
that's acceptable, oh, we're just gonna starve you. Okay, kids, sorry, we're just not gonna deal with this anymore. We're just gonna starve you or smother you. Like that's to me is wrong. I can't even wrap my head around that.
Yeah, no, I had a hard time. Like I couldn't make it
Oh,
make sense at
heads would
all.
roll, heads would roll.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be like, okay, well, if it's okay to starve or smother him, can we do it to you since you're well aware and you're sitting here right now and you're wide awake and you know what's going on? Is that okay? Oh, it's
Yeah,
not? I thought so. Okay, so
that
don't
was
ever
the
say that to me
whole
again.
thing, like comparing it to my other kids, because I was like, y'all would call, I would go to jail. I'm like, but
Right. You
it's
would?
okay for me to do it to him because he can't advocate for himself or he can't speak by himself. Like that's not okay.
Yeah, and this is why we got to get awareness out here. And doctors, you would think they're educated. Some of the medical personnel are some of the stupidest people out there. They really
I
are.
just
They don't know how to work with
I
disabled
think
people. They don't know how to work with the blind and people like your son. And it's like you would think all the education they got in school, they would understand.
And I
But
mean, I think a lot of it is the fact that, like, my son's diagnosis, the only thing that they learn in medical school, the only thing a textbook in medical school says about my son's diagnosis is one sentence, and it says it's incompatible with life. Um, so
my
there
goodness.
isn't a whole lot of education on that. Most of these kids do die very early, um, or the parents don't find other parents whose kids are, 8, 9, 10 years old, even if they only live for 10 years. But, they don't see that. So they take the doctors at face value, and the doctors are like, and the doctors don't know any better either because these kids are normally not spread awareness for, like that's why I have Creed's journey so that other people can see it and see, he was supposed to die when he was born. They said there was absolutely no way he could live. And he's almost 11 and he's very happy and he's very cognitively aware. Yes, he does have medical issues, but his life was still worth it. And I don't think it's so much that the doctors are stupid. I think that they're ignorant to a lot of what happens and to the kids that have survived because for so long people were so scared to speak out and to be judged. And a lot of parents now are just like, we're going to tell you how we live and how this works and everything else because if we don't, you will never know. And so I've noticed a lot that a lot of the doctors are willing to listen to me and they're very interested in learning about Creed and his diagnosis and all of that stuff because it helps them learn and then they can maybe later down the road look at another case and be like, look, I saw a kid just like this 15 years ago and this kid lived for 11, 13, 14, 15 years and even though it wasn't a normal lifespan, like he had a good life.
Yeah, exactly. But you are a wonderful mom. I mean, I've like I said, I've been seeing your journey. I just see the love and everything. And, I'm just hoping these doctors think and get educated. And I think there needs to be more disability awareness in medical training. I think a lot needs to change. It would be great.
And it would. And I think it's getting there. I mean, there a lot of the older doctors that used to see Creed, they were very like stuck in that mindset. And a lot of the younger doctors that have seen Creed and interacted with him have now gotten to the point they're like, like his neurosurgeon the other day was like, Creed all taught us a couple things. Like she
Oh,
knows that he is not a normal case and that you just have to follow his lead and do the best you can with the decisions that you have.
yeah.
And I also try to just like, there's a lot of weight on their shoulders. If something goes wrong, if that child dies on that table, on that OR table, or, the doctor thinks that this is what's going on, but they make the wrong choice and that kid dies, like they still carry that in their conscience. They are not
Oh,
their
yeah.
parent. They are not, but I
I know
think
I
with
would.
pediatrics, it's very, very hard because those are small children. And I have watched or listened to multiple parents lose their children, spending so much time in the hospital, and their screams still haunt me years later. Like it's an awful thing to have to hear and see. And I couldn't imagine the pain from, like the doctors feel and the guilt that they carry, even though they know that they did everything that they could. So I understand why some of them are cautious and they approach things the way they do, because that's a lot of weight to carry.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us hear the saying, it takes a village, but we all know a lot of parents with medically complex kids are doing this with little to no support. Can you share what that's been like for you?
I mean, honestly, so my brother and sister-in-law just had a baby. Um, I left Creed with my husband and my mom for 48 hours so I could go help my sister-in-law. She was trying to breastfeed and just a couple other things that she was struggling with. So, I went there and they live about 4 hours from us. I got there and like less than 10 minutes later, my husband calls me and he's like, "Hey, where's the extra like lubrication packets?" And I'm like, "You decannulated him, didn't you?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "No, sir, you absolutely did." And like, I hang up the phone and my sister-in-law's like, "What's decannulated?" And I was like, "He pulled his trach out." I was like, "Not on purpose. He was probably doing trach care." But like my husband was like the nurse kind of panicked and she was running around like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what do we do?" He's like, and I'm trying to find the extra trach. But I went up there and I helped my sister-in-law and I cleaned their house and I was doing all this stuff for them. And my sister-in-law was like, "You don't have to do that." And I was like, "Look, I don't." I was like, "I'm 11 years into this whole parent thing, and they keep saying it takes a village." And I'm like, do they just show up or like do I have to find them? Like, where's this village everybody's speaking of? Like
Yeah.
I'm here because I love you and I love my brother and I know how exhausting it is. I had my first kid as a single mom. He spent 4 days in the NICU. They handed me a baby that was missing most of his brain and pretty much told me good luck. They didn't tell me what specialist to see. They didn't tell me anything. They just told me he was going to die. I'm
Oh,
like, so it was just me
goodness.
and this baby, and I'm trying to learn how to be a parent, and all my friends are having newborns at the same time, and all their kids are fine, and they're planning birthday parties, and I'm in the hospital and doing surgeries and everything else. I was like, and with the other kids, it was the same. My husband was there for, I think, 48 hours with our second, and then he had to go back to work because I couldn't work. And then with our third, he didn't even meet her until a week old. And then with our fourth, he was there for, 24, 48 hours. And then I was at home with a medically fragile child and a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. And there was nobody. There's nobody
Oh my
bringing food over. There's
goodness.
nobody cleaning my house. There's nobody doing any of this. One day post hysterectomy, or actually the night I had a hysterectomy, they're bringing me stuff like to set up for trach care. And my husband can do it, but I'm the primary caregiver. So he doesn't know how long the ties are supposed to be, that kind of stuff. So, like, I just had a hysterectomy and he's trying to get me to set up ties. And, we talk about villages all the time, but I'm like, we don't have a village. We have me, my husband, and my mom. My husband works 70 to 80 hours a week because I can't work because my son requires so much care. My mom is she stays overnight most nights just to watch him, but like if his trach comes out or something happens with his ventilator or something like that, she's not trained to handle that. So she would have to come and pick me up or wake me up. And then me, I'm up for 48 to 70 2 hours a lot of times because, like I said before, he still has to be taken care of. If I took a shower, he needs a shower. He needs straight care. He needs his feeds made. He needs all of this stuff. And sometimes I just want to be like, where is this village that everybody's talking about? Because I am mid breakdown. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And I don't have anybody bringing me food when I'm too tired. And I don't have anybody saying, hey, let me take the other three kids so you can sleep like he sleeps. Um, so I really try to be that village for everybody else as much as I can, which is why I went to my brother and
Oh,
sister in laws because I was like, I am. And my brother's like, you're tired. I'm like, I am, but I'm used to being tired. I'm like, you just had a baby. Like, your wife needs to rest. You need to rest. You need to focus on her and the baby. I will make sure the house clean. All of this stuff is done. Y'all just need to focus on each other because I didn't get that.
yeah.
So, I mean, and I think we try as much as we can as parents of medically fragile children to be a village for each other. But when you're all in the throes of chronic grief and ambiguous grief and everything that comes with
It's
this, it can be
hard.
really hard to
It's
build a
hard.
village.
Yeah, it's
So
hard. So, I mean, with all of that said, I mean, how do you cope with the isolation that can come with this kind of journey?
I think I've just gotten used to it, honestly.
Makes sense.
I do have a lot of friends that have medically fragile children, that, we talk on the phone. It's why I run Creed's Journey and I post a lot, like not 95% of the time, nothing is too much information. Okay. Like it's probably getting posted there and it's probably getting posted on my personal page because I don't really I have like 1 to 2 real life friends that I see maybe 1 to 2 times a month. Um, because I have too much going on and I can't just pack Creed up and go to the park with their kids. It doesn't work like that. Not by myself. So we I share on the internet and I keep in contact with my friends that have medically fragile children over the phone or, sometimes we'll be in the hospital at the same time and then we get to hang out because, the rest of the kids are at home and Creed's in the hospital and her kids are at the hospital. So we can go grab dinner, or do something like that because we have to eat and we're both
Yeah.
there. So, those are things that I try to do when we're all in the hospital together, stuff like that, because it just gives me the opportunity,
To connect.
with another human. Yeah, but there are days that my husband comes home and I'm like, I've had no adult interaction for like a week now. I need you to keep them while I go to like Walmart, even if it's just to like look at another adult. Like
Oh,
that's
wow.
where we're at.
Aw. So has there been a time when you really felt the weight of the loneliness or a time like someone really surprised you by stepping up for you?
I mean, there's been a lot of times that people have stepped in. Not so much like I guess in person, but a lot of people on Creed's Journey, I'll have someone message me every once in a while and be like, hey, we need to we would like to buy dinner for your family, like, or you seem really overwhelmed right now. Do you like, I could pay for somebody to help pick up your house or whatever, especially if Creed's been in the hospital for a long time. My friend, after Creed's 3 month hospital stay, we had 3 months worth of medical shipments in our house, and he gets 22 boxes a month, and they're not small boxes. So that's 66 boxes in my house, like in his room. And I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. He's been in the hospital for 3.5 months. He's getting IV antibiotics every 8 hours. I'm
Oh,
essentially running an ICU in my house. And I am just overwhelmed. And my friend just showed up and started unpacking boxes. And she was like, it may not even be in the right spot. And I was like, I don't care. It's the fact that all the boxes are broken down and everything's out of the boxes. And I can walk through this room again because I don't have all of this medical stuff. I can organize it later. It's just like I have ADHD and borderline personality disorder and other mental health diagnoses that when I get overwhelmed, sometimes it's just hard to know where to start. She didn't even
oh,
ask, and I couldn't even really help her because I was in the middle of doing Creed's bath and IV antibiotics and trach care and everything. So I was very busy, and she just let me do what I needed to with Creed and pretty much unpacked all of those boxes and put them up. And I got pizza for the kids, and she was like, it wasn't much, and I was like, it's way more than you think it is. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
it's a lot. It's a lot because I'm not overwhelmed now. Like, I don't have to look at all
that's
those boxes.
huge.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is just when I tell people like I I don't have a village, I have a internet village for the most part. Like I have people that are willing to talk or, be like, hey, let me buy dinner for you and the kids, or, like, and that means a lot. But sometimes it's like, I need a physical village, someone that can say,
Right.
hey, let me come and take the kids so you can take a nap. And I do
And
have
just
a friend like
physically be
that.
there.
Yeah. And I do have a friend like that, but her daughter is very similar to Creed. She also had a stroke. And it's not always possible for her to have her three kids and then my three younger kids, and it's just a lot on her too, and I get that, but there are times where she has taken my kids and been like, hey, sleep for 2 hours. And that's the thing is
So
like
nice of her.
we try to do as much as we can, even if it makes us a little bit more tired, because we also know where that other person is at and how absolutely exhausting it is to be the only one. It has gotten better. But for 7 years, my husband worked out of state. He didn't move home until
Oh,
about 3 to 4 years ago. So it was always me with all of the kids. He would come home every couple of weekends.
oh
But,
gosh.
I'm juggling
That's so
oof,
hard.
a lot of small kids and then two of them with special needs, one of them that is extremely medically fragile. And it's just me. So it got very, very lonely. And I think that sometimes you just need someone that can relate to you on a level where it's not like, I'm like, my kid's dying and they're like, we're really struggling to potty train. And it's not discrediting their struggle because
Right.
trust me, potty training was literally going to be the death of me. And there are like, I always tell them, like, I'm 100% willing to listen to your problems. I have one friend all the time that was like, I feel bad complaining because you're going through so much worse. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're drowning in 7 feet of water or 20 feet of water, you're still drowning. I'm like, my
It's still
problems are
big for
rough.
you.
I'm like, but my worst day could pale in comparison to one of my friends who buried her daughter 6 months ago. Like I haven't lost a child, so I don't know what that feels like, but she doesn't discredit me and I don't discredit her because we
Right.
all have our
It's
own
not a
battles and our own
competition.
struggles. Yeah. I'm like, we don't compare traumas. We don't compare what we're going through. All I can tell you is like, but sometimes I do need someone that can, I guess, more
Understand on your
so,
level
yeah,
so you
like
feel seen.
when I'm like, I'm so tired of making life and death decisions every day, and my soul is tired. I'm not just physically tired. Like, I literally, there are days where my BPD is really bad, and I'm like, I don't even want to be here anymore. I don't want any of this. Like, I'm too tired to do this anymore because it's not just a physical exhaustion. Your soul is tired. You are completely drained, and it doesn't matter how much you sleep, it doesn't get any better. Um, So I need someone that would understand on that level that, they have also been to the point of soul exhaustion to where they're constantly making life and death decisions for their kids. And it's like, I don't want to make these choices. I have no good choices. It's a crappy choice or a crappy choice, and I just have to pick the less crappy one. And there's
Oh,
no, so I try to create my village with different people, even if it is just an internet village, and speak out on Creed's journey because I don't ever want anyone to feel as alone as I was. Um, I was a young mom. I was 20. All my friends had kids at the same time. All their kids were fine. And then I had a terminally ill child that was having surgery after surgery after surgery. And I didn't know how to handle the emotions or the grief or any of that. And everyone's like, just be thankful he's alive. Just be thankful that he got to come home from the hospital or whatever, and that's a good thing. It's good to be thankful, but also put me in the
but you
mental
acknowledge it's
state
hard too.
it put me in the mental state of like I couldn't grieve and I couldn't feel those emotions that are normal, and I didn't know who to ask because nobody else had a terminal kid that I knew personally. So I'm like, how, like, are these emotions normal? Am I supposed to be this mad? Am I supposed to be this upset? Like, am I supposed to randomly break down and like hyperventilate? So I just kept shoving all those emotions back. And then eventually, obviously, they exploded because you can only bottle them up for so long. And I had like a whole mental breakdown. So I started Creed Journey and I started
Oh,
sharing so that other moms that were maybe in the same position as me that didn't have anybody that could understand where they were coming from would realize that all of these emotions are normal and that it's okay to simultaneously be grateful that your kid is still alive
but be upset too.
and be angry that they have to go through all of this and be
Right.
angry that it why them and it's okay to ask questions and it's
It
okay
is. It most certainly
to
is.
cope with dark humor and to do you have to do what keeps you afloat and that's all you can do and that's what I tell everybody you have to do what is best for you and your family regardless of what everybody else thinks so
Yeah. So, unpacking all of that, we all know that when you're caring for a child with such high medical needs, it's easy for siblings to also feel left out or like their needs don't matter quite as much. How do you try to balance that? Because I know that's probably something you're dealing with too, I'm pretty sure.
so for us it's been we've always included them in Creed's care. Like, hey, come help
That's
me give his
nice.
meds. Or, hey, can you go grab this out of the closet because mom really needs it? Um, and then there are also times where we have had to kind of been like, just focus on them. Like we put my 7-year old in gymnastics, and on that night she has me to herself because she has to go to gymnastics. My 8-year old's being enrolled in kickboxing. On that night, he'll have me to himself. Um, my autistic daughter probably gets about as much attention as Creed, just because she can run and move around. And when the nurse is here, she can focus solely on Creed and I can focus on the other kids. Um, but we've just tried to set aside time where we know that they're not getting as much, and we'll be like, hey, let's go watch a movie, or let's take the other kids to Jumping World, or let's take them to the park for a couple hours. And then just, we don't lie to them. We don't, mm, like, they know that he's terminal. Obviously, in kid terms, we don't just flat out say, your brother's going to die. We're like, he's very sick. He was born this way. We don't know why he was born this way. Um, but he is he will eventually pass away because there's only so much we can do on earth, and then he will be whole once he gets to heaven, and that is the goal. And when we get there, he will be walking and talking and playing and won't need all these machines, surgeries, medicines, anything like that.
Mhm.
And then we've just always involved them as far as like, this is what we have to do every night and this is a lot, and like puts a lot on mom, and we're very real with our feelings, and
And that's
I,
always good because it teaches them not to bottle it up too.
yeah, and I will
Healthy
be
to get
like,
it out.
look, I know you really want to spend time with mom, but right now mom is super overstimulated and I have a million things to do, and you screaming mom every 2 seconds is not helping. And I don't want to have to yell because I keep asking you to lower your voice. So please go outside for 5 minutes so I can breathe. And then we can reassess the situation and we can figure out what needs to be done. So it's just a lot of real honesty and a lot of mistakes. And there are times that I am overwhelmed and I kind of overreact and take my emotions out on them, and I'll snap and yell. And then I'll come back 10 minutes later and be like, hey,
Look
mom's
at what
really
you're dealing
sorry.
with, though. Even parents who don't have medically complex children can sometimes lose their patience. And I'm sorry, but any parent that says, "Oh, I've never yelled at my kids before, I've never lost patience in my life," I think they're lying because
Yeah,
even typical children, I don't want to call
yeah,
them normal children because I don't like the word normal. That to me is a setting on an appliance, but typical children can be much, right? They can be demanding, especially when you have more than one, and parents just get overwhelmed and then it's shout like, "Stop already, just stop." And then of course, yeah, they'll come back to apologize, but I mean, look at all that you're dealing with. You're
yeah. And
dealing with a
normally
lot
we
and you're still rocking it. You're still doing amazing.
thank you. We say neurotypical because that's like, they are neurotypical. We don't use the word normal.
Yeah, I
Because
hate
I
that word.
have most of my kids are neurodivergent. So we use the word neurotypical, but
Mhm.
that's the thing. Like if I do snap or I am overwhelmed or, whatever, I just say, you know what, mom's really sorry. You didn't deserve that. I am overwhelmed, but it's not okay for me to yell at you because I'm feeling those emotions. And we also tell other people that all of their teachers and stuff know that they have a terminally ill medically fragile brother. And when he's in the hospital, I text their teachers and say, hey, he got life flighted last night. He's really not stable. The kids may have a harder time today. Just so that they're
Hope the
aware
teachers are
because
understanding about it.
they are, and most of the time,
Thank
like the
goodness.
counselor is also aware, and they will, if my 8-year-old struggles more, and his teacher will take him to the counselor and they'll talk it out, whatever they need to
Aw.
do to get him to the point that he's okay. My 7-year-old, she tends to call me and that makes her feel better. My youngest, she just gets really irritated and she'll keep saying Maddie sad, and
Aw.
it's heartbreaking, but we don't
Aw.
we let them feel those emotions and we tell them that they're okay and that it's okay to be mad that mom and dad are gone and at the hospital, and we're sorry that we have to leave and be there with Creed, but that he needs us more right now, and that he needs a little bit of extra attention, and that when we get home, we will figure something out as far as spending more time with them. I just think it's more about being real and honest with them because if you're not real and honest, then they
It's gonna
don't
be
really
worse.
understand.
Right.
Yeah,
And of course, this is already impacting them emotionally because I mean they're around it, they're seeing what's going on. And the best way to help them deal with that is to be real, be honest, be supportive like you guys have. And I think you're doing the best you can under the circumstances.
yeah, and I mean, like grief therapy is great. Just teaching them how to handle the grief beforehand. And like I said, that's another reason we don't lie to them because I feel like it would be exponentially more traumatizing for him to just suddenly pass away and us have been telling them this whole time that he was going to be fine.
That's
Um,
so dishonest. Oh my goodness. No.
so, I mean, I've seen it. I have seen it. They think it's easier. And I mean, I understand if the child is like like they're one or they're younger than that, like not even just not explaining the situation to them, I guess. But I've seen parents that just do not tell their other kids. And then their terminal kid dies, and it's like this huge
An
confusion for
avalanche.
all
It's
of those kids.
avalanche of and that's even worse. I think, you
So
know, parents think that they're doing right by keeping it hidden, but it's not a good thing and it sows distrust. I'm
yeah,
not
and that's
that.
why we did the grief therapy so that they can have the tools to deal with it when it does happen. And just we work on our emotions and handling things and learn that everybody makes mistakes, even mom and dad, and we get overwhelmed just like everybody else. And we just want them to not, like, they are going to have some trauma. There's no avoiding it. They've watched me literally bag their brother. They've watched their brother cough blood on my face. Like there is trauma there. It's not going to be completely traumaless. We just
Of course
want
there's
them to
gonna be
be
some.
able to cope with the trauma and deal with the grief and not have long lasting issues. We want them to have
Mhm.
healthy ways of coping with all this and realize that even if they have an outburst or they get overwhelmed, that even as a mom and dad, we still get overwhelmed and we still yell. And as long as you say, I'm sorry, that wasn't okay, even if I was overwhelmed, then we know that we're helping them just get through all of this and hopefully raising them into kids or adults who are compassionate and empathetic to people that are going through things and are able to handle their emotions, um, instead of, my generation is very much like we don't talk about emotions. And that's a
Yeah.
big thing. So we just
Hmm.
we just want to give them those emotional coping skills and the ability to not be like us where we get really overwhelmed and we're yelling and screaming. And I just tell everybody, as an adult, when Creed is in this situation, he's really sick, I think that he may die. Like, I have a meltdown, so I can't imagine my 8, 7, 6-year-old that don't know how to cope with their emotions yet trying to cope without having a meltdown. So like we also
It's
have
gonna
to give them
happen.
grace. Like
Everyone
we
needs
have
grace.
Yeah, I'm like, we got to give them grace. Even if they're kids, they can still feel all of this. They just don't know what these big emotions are.
Right. I
So
think sometimes, and I see this more often than I'd like, but a lot of adults hold kids to impossible standards. Like adults are allowed to have a bad day, but suddenly it's wrong or disrespectful if a kid does, and I don't agree with that.
I'm the same way. It's caused
Don't
a
agree
lot of
with that.
conflicts
Yeah.
because I'm very much like, as an adult, I can throw a really good temper tantrum when I'm overwhelmed and like just have a whole meltdown and cry. Like I give my kids that same space.
Right. And they
Now
should.
not towards like you're not gonna throw stuff, you're not gonna hurt other people, but just crying and like screaming, having a meltdown, you have the space to do that because these emotions are big and they're real
And
and
they're
it's okay to
hard.
feel them. Yeah.
It's okay to feel them, experience them. It's okay to
Yeah,
feel
you
them.
have to.
It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, you have to feel them, experience them to let them go.
Right.
So that's our goal is just to support them as much as we can through this process while also giving everybody in this situation the grace and the ability to feel these emotions and get through this process without causing, you know, long-term mental health issues. We want all of the emotions to be in the open and to be as supportive of the other kids as we possibly can.
Right. I agree. Well, what do you wish others knew about being a sibling to someone who's medically complex?
Just that, you know, like we've had issues with some kids that make comments that are like, well, he can't play or he can't do this or he can't do that. Um, like it hurts my kids' feelings and my oldest, or not my oldest, but my oldest neurotypical child is very sensitive, so he just tends to get really upset. And he's like, "He's my brother. He still counts." And I'm like, "Yes, he does. He still counts, buddy."
Yeah,
Um,
good job.
my
What
seven
a
year
bright
old,
and intelligent and empathetic kid.
he is my 7 year old. Like I said, just gets very offended, um, and gets very angry. So I think it's just teaching your kids that every family dynamic is different, and that these kids go through more and are more giving and empathetic and sensitive to what other people need, because they have to go through so much and they have to watch me, you know, their parents and their brother go through so much. They tend to be very hypercritical of themselves because as a parent to a medically fragile child, I am hypercritical of myself. So they've picked up on that. So I always try to tell people like they may look like they're holding it together really well, but they also know they can't exactly express all those emotions right now because I'm not okay and their brother's not okay and their dad's not okay. So they think they need to hold it together. So sometimes they just need a little bit more understanding and love, um, and the ability to let go of those emotions. And some people can be judgmental of that when they have their meltdowns or whatever. And I'm like, they've been through more in 8 years than most people have ever been through in their entire life. Like, you have to give them the grace that they deserve for being through all of this rather than just being judgmental of the fact that you think that they shouldn't have like expressed these emotions.
Right.
And,
I
you know, like
agree.
my daughter one time, they were like, you know, how many siblings do you have? And she's like, well, there's four of us, but there's about to be three. She didn't mean it bad. You know, Creed had just come home on hospice, and to her, everybody
He's
around her was,
expecting to lose him.
yeah. But of course, like all these adults are shocked, and I was like, she doesn't mean it. Like, this is her reality. Like, this is very black and white to her. There is no gray area. Her brother is dying. So right now there's four, but there's about to be three. As a 7 year old, they don't have the ability to abstractly, you know, think about all of this. It is literally just black or white. There's no gray area. Um, so to her, there was only going to be three.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, they are very bluntly honest and they are not going to sugarcoat anything. And they will
Right.
tell you, you know, my brother is dying. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that that offends some people also. And I understand, like, they don't want to explain that bluntly, but to a child, they don't know how to make anything not blunt. That's just
Right.
how they are.
Everything's black and
So
white to a kid. I mean, they have
Yeah,
very
so
concrete thinking until about the age of 11 years old. So, I mean, how else are they going to explain it?
yeah. And that's yeah. It's just they need grace, just like the parents do. It's not an easy
Everyone
situation to
needs
be in.
grace.
So
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your heart. Your son he's not just strong, he's vibrant and unique, and he's so deeply loved by you and so many of us in the community who've been following this journey for a long time. And your journey as his mom, it's powerful. I mean, the love, the sacrifices, the moments of quiet courage, it's all matters so much. And this conversation is a reminder that medically complex doesn't mean less. And behind every trach tube or machinery, there's a whole world of personality, joy, and life. And behind every childlike creed, there is a mom quietly holding it together, and sometimes without a village, and sometimes feeling invisible, but still showing up with fierce love. And let's make space to see and support it. And what I will say to my audience, if you're watching this and you feel moved to support this wonderful mom, you can actually help her directly. I'm going to include her Venmo and other ways of donating to her in the video description because she needs support. And oftentimes, caregivers are forgotten. Caregivers are just expected to be, they're just expected to go on. And especially if they're mom, oh, it's just mom, they're supposed to do that. But caregivers need support and not silence. So I really want everyone to show her love. I mean, and her page is also going to be in the description as well. So I would encourage you guys to follow her and just be part of her journey. And if you guys want to offer words of encouragement, hit her up. She could use that. Everybody needs support. Before we end, is there any more parting words you want to say today or
I mean just be kind. You never like there's a lot of things you don't realize people are going through every day. There's people that see me in the grocery store every day that don't realize what I'm going through. And sometimes just a little bit of kindness gets you through that day.
um, well, thank you so much for your time today. We're so happy to have you and we wish you the best.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's an honor and a privilege.